Okay, let's go live.
We are live.
Are we live? All right, let's get this going then.
Am I seeing anything here?
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face.
Oh, I'm from Brooklyn.
Hey, guys, any...
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank Latirzo, former fighter, part-time writer, full-time observer. No, that is not co-host Jack Hirsch. That is former New York Commissioner Randy G. Gordon, who's filling in for Jack. And Randy, before you come on, let me just say this. Jack, just remember, the Philly Golden Gloves are as tough as the New York Golden Gloves, A. B, maybe Randy can give me a challenge because we disagreed on 3 things last week. I won 2, and you won 1, and you were lucky to win the 1 you did. But anyhow, Jack, you'll be back next week. Randy, welcome to the show. Thanks for filling in. How are you?
I am fine, and I want to thank Jack for taking this day off. He's working so hard. I think he became a new grandpa and everything like that. Man, congratulations to him and Audrey. What a great looking family they have.
Randy, I know that you're a big boxing geek and nothing else matters, but does it bother you that they no longer play football in New York?
Wait, do they have football teams here? When
they have 2 teams, and I think collectively they might have 6 or 7 wins. Maybe.
You know what? Yesterday, I just watched the games because they're there. Yesterday, I got to tell you, that was a heck of a finish to the New York Giant game. It was on that final kick, and it was to the hated Patriots. And when they missed that field goal, even I, who don't really care who wins, yes! So, for all the Giant fans out there who have been suffering for years, good for you guys yesterday.
Randy, I'm in the heart of Philadelphia. I love the fighters. Can't stand the pro teams. The Philly fans are crazy. But I have to admit this. The Eagles, on the betting the money line, is probably the most sure bet in pro sports, and their offense is probably the best unit in the NFL. And I hate to say this, but I think they're a lock to win the Super Bowl without injuries. And it's funny too. If you think about this, the Eagles dominate this town, but yet perhaps the best young fighter in boxing, Jaron Boots Ennis, from Philadelphia, gets no coverage.
I don't get it, but you got to remember, this is the NFL we're talking about. The NFL is America's game.
It's America's pastime. It surpassed baseball in the 80s.
And I do think as Boots Ennis he's now the full IBF champion. And I think as he's going to start defending that championship, I think people are going to start to realize that this is perhaps a once-in-a-lifetime talent. I don't know if we're ever going to get to see him fight the likes of Terrence Crawford, which to me would be about the biggest fight you could possibly make. And we'll get to see Boots Ennis, I think, at his very, very best. But I think his day is coming. And I think in 2024, many, many more people are going to know who Boots Ennis is.
Let me ask you this before we get to the big fight over the weekend, and we both have a lot of thoughts on that. As you were just speaking, something just occurred to me, and I know a lot of hardcore guys, and you yourself being a big Inouye fan may even have fault with what I'm going to say. But let's just say that Terrence Crawford and Jaron Ennis signed to fight in March of 2024. I could make a case that in today's boxing world, you couldn't pit two more skilled fighters in the ring against each other. They may be the two most skilled boxers in the world right now. I know he has a good case, but I think Ennis is that good. I said the last time we were on, we talked about him. You know, you talked about him being a generational talent. I think Terrence Crawford is that, and I think Boots may be the next guy to carry that baton and take it to that mantle that Bud has. And I think if they fought, I don't know. Can you think of two fighters we could put in against each other at or near their prime that have that skill level?
There's only one fight that I could even think of right now that if you made it, you'd have to say both these guys are right there. And I think it would be the two undefeated light heavyweight champions, Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev, who's 19-0, 19 knockouts. He hits so hard that if he misses you with a shot, he hurts you. That is about the only fight that I think I'd rather see than Boots Ennis against Crawford. And I'll tell you why. I want to look, if we could make the fight with Ennis and Crawford in March or April, we do it. But I would rather see Crawford perhaps have another fight and show everybody, wow, look at this guy, how good he is. And then I would like Ennis to come out and beat somebody of a top caliber, and everybody's going to say, man, where has he been? They just haven't watched him. And now both guys are going to carry bigger reputations into a fight against each other. I really want to see Boots Ennis in one big fight.
Yeah, he needs that because he's not quite there yet status-wise.
Yeah.
And let's face it, if Crawford beat him, everybody would say, well, who did Boots beat? And he wouldn't get much. He wouldn't get much accolades for doing that. And in Crawford's at the point now that he's I hate to say it, I hate to use the word, but look, let's face it, it's prize fighting. They're fighting for a prize and money. And Boots right now doesn't bring that cachet to the table where Crawford benefits by beating him. I know you agree.
Totally. Look, and I realize we are talking a long time ago when Sugar Ray Leonard was the darling of the 1976 Olympic team. He came out, he turned professional later that year, and then went on to a superstar at just an absolute incredible career that has left him a multi-millionaire all these years later, and talked about in terms of being one of the greatest welterweights of all time. And I realize it's a different time. There's no ABC, there's no NBC, there's no CBS, there's streaming services and whatnot. The fights we used to watch were on in the afternoon. Now they don't go on until almost the next day, till it's midnight.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my God, when is this thing going to be over? I got to be up in 4 hours or whatever. So most of the young fans don't get to see these fighters. My grandkids who might be 8, 9 years old and expressing an interest in boxing, they can't watch the fight with Grandpa because the fight's on way too late.
Exactly.
In the afternoon, the kids could watch with Grandpa and with Dad and everything like that. Different animal.
It's a shame because, our buddy Russell Peltz and some other guys, they like to rip boxing today. But there really are, and Russell would admit this, but there really are some outstanding, terrific fighters out there today. The problem is they don't fight each other, and it's hard to find them. And us old school guys, we're used to either going to the theater to pay and paying for it, or turning the TV on and seeing it. And as you said too, another problem is the fights start too late, West Coast times, which is a perfect segue for me to go into the Benavidez Andrade fight this past weekend. Do you realize that started at 11:30 and was over by midnight? I went to the gym the next day and I thought, this is great. I can get 5 or 6 hours in and be up and go work out instead of it ending at 1:30 and being so hyped about it where I can't fall asleep immediately when it's over. That fight was over at 12 o'clock. And for those who didn't see it and don't know what happened, Benavidez, after the first couple rounds that were pretty slow, where Andrade showed him some nice stuff, some moves, some jabs, mixing up aggression and boxing. With a minute left in the third round, Benavidez just decided, okay, I've seen enough. I'm going to go get him. And it was over after the 6th round. Unbelievable performance. Benavidez' signature performance. Randy, the guy is a killer. He's big. He's aggressive. He has good punch placement. He can hit with both hands. He's mean, and he has height and reach. I mean, look, there's only one fight out there for him. We know what that is. Give me your thoughts on the fight.
Okay, on the fight itself, on Benavidez against Andrade, I really thought that perhaps Demetrius had some kind of shot. He was unbeaten. He was a lightning quick southpaw. And I saw him doing for 12 rounds. And I wondered, could he do this for 12 rounds? What you saw in the first 3, maybe even into the 4th round, it was magnificent on the part of Demetrius Andrade. And he was actually getting better and better. He was moving side to side, in and out. And Benavidez was taking a look at him, but he was throwing some very hard shots. And then finally, you could dance all you want. Sooner or later, you just might get hit with a shot. And when he did, those punches from Benavidez were just way too hard.
Once he hurt him in the 3rd round, the fight was basically done.
By the 3rd, 4th round, you could now see any thoughts that I had that Demetrius was going to be able to do this for 9 more rounds. That left the very next round. And Benavidez knew it. He picked his shots. Much physically stronger. He might be the strongest guy I have ever seen at 168 pounds. A brutally hard puncher. And he went out there and he did the job. But once he did the job, he did it the way, if you're going to be looking for a big fight next,
he got everybody talking.
He didn't eke out some stinking decision where there was some people who said, wait a minute, he didn't win this decision. He left people with their jaws open saying, oh my God.
We want to see him again.
Yes. But now
we want to see him again. Here's the one thing, and I agree with what you said. I'm not sure if he's as strong as super middleweight we've seen, but I'll just say this. And I'm going to give Andrade some credit. I think he watched the Plant fight and he realized, and I'm not saying Caleb Plant ran, but I think he tried to pick his spots, and I think he was smart. Where Andrade, at least, I think what he realized after the 1st round was, I can't. It reminded me a little bit of Ali and Foreman, to the fact where I think Andrade realized, I can't run and box and beat him. He's coming too hard and too fast. I have to stand my ground and try to get his respect. And if I don't get it with my power, if I can put punches together with speed, maybe that'll give him a little hesitation. Where Ali did it with the rope-a-dope, and that kind of much took it out of Foreman. So I got to give Andrade credit, Randy, because I really think he said, you know what? I'm not going to run and lose every round and say I went the distance, but I didn't compete. I'm going to try to hold my ground. And if I can't gain his respect, I'm probably going to lose. And I think that's what happened. But I will say this. Benavidez pushed him to make that decision with his power and his aggression. And I think that's why I said, yeah, I'd like to box. But look, I'm not hurting him. I've got to show him something to keep him off of me, to slow him down a little bit, because pretty soon I'm not going to be able to box and I'm going to have to fight. And I'd rather fight and let him think I'm initiating it than letting him take the play away from me.
Exactly. And you know what? You just used two words that over the years I've heard you use all the time. And I always will watch what we think is a two-sided fight. And it's the guy with the power and pressure who constantly puts on that, let's say, that Joe Frazier kind of never get off your case kind of pressure, never lets you set up. And Benavidez was doing that. He just kept the pressure coming. And when he was walking in, those long arms, that jab wasn't just laid out there. He was throwing that jab with bad intentions.
He's a little better boxer than people think. He's not just a puncher.
Oh, he can do it all. And I had been calling from the very beginning. I want to see the great Canelo Alvarez face the winner of this fight. And the winner was David Benavidez. And now I'm hearing that Canelo, in his next fight in May, is going to be looking at perhaps Jaime Munguia, undefeated in about 40, 41 fights. Or I'm hearing Jamal Charlo, to which I say just give me a break. Or I don't want to see him face David Morrell. David Morrell, damn good fighter, but he hasn't done.
Let's
enough.
let that build up a little bit.
Yes. And see, I really don't think that means all that much yet. It may in another year or so. But the fact is, the names that I mentioned from Morrell and Munguia and Jamal Charlo, to me, which is the most ridiculous thing of all, and I don't care that he's 33-0, he doesn't deserve the shot after he lays off for 2.5 years, comes back with a lackluster 10-round decision, didn't do anything to make me say, wow. I
couldn't stop a guy that Crawford dismantled.
Come on, yeah. Well, and then he said, remember, he beat my brother. This is going to be revenge. My brother is a different twin than I am. Well, you didn't show it the other night, Jamal. Had you gone out there and blasted Jose Benavidez out of there, I believe you. But you labored for 10 rounds, and you never showed me that you were the guy who can beat Canelo Alvarez. You didn't show me that night that you could beat Benavidez, the other Benavidez, the David Benavidez, and you didn't show me that you could even beat Andrade. So I don't want to see Jamal Charlo get the next fight because he doesn't deserve it.
But here's the problem. And I totally agree with what you just said. But you and I both know, and people watching us and hearing us know, that boxing a lot of times is about narratives and stories. And Duran fought the Viruet brothers and beat them both. Canelo, there's a story where he fights the Charlo brothers. They can sell that. The Klitschko brothers did the same thing. They can sell the revenge factor. And Randy, that'll sell. But Jack and I spoke after the Plant Benavidez fight. And Jack's contention was, and I kind of agree with him, that Benavidez, for being the new bully and the boogeyman, even though he clearly beat Caleb Plant, he didn't stop him. Canelo stopped him. He didn't make us want to see him. He didn't make his case strong enough where he did that against a guy in Andrade who was never defeated, and he stopped him within 6 rounds. He set himself apart. But I'm just afraid that because Canelo, and Randy, I want to talk about this before we go off. The Canelo, because he's the money and he can pick and choose who he's going to fight, we won't like it if he fights Charlo, but it's just the perfect fight. Charlo is rusty, but he's a name. He's a big, strong guy. The fight can be sold, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw it, but I agree with you. I've defended Canelo over the years. Now, look, is his career somewhat like Floyd Mayweather's? Has he made a career beating some guys on the wrong side of the fence? Absolutely. But he also beat some guys that were in their prime, and he also went up and he fought Bivol with no catch weight, something Mayweather never did. But if Canelo doesn't fight Benavidez next, I will call it a duck.
Jerry Cooney and I were truly arguing today about this very subject. Jerry said, look what he did. He moved up and he fought Bivol. Well, guess what? To me, when Canelo did that, he said, if I beat him, look how great I am. And if I don't beat him, so what? He's the bigger guy. He's undefeated, pound for pound, one of the best in the business. So I have nothing to lose. It's a win-win situation for me. I am not impressed that he went 12 rounds with Dimitri Bivol. He also has been pressured by David Benavidez for years. He is letting this fight marinate and over-marinate. He has fought Avni Yildirim. He has fought Rocky Fielding. Come on, give me a break, Canelo, already. Fight David Benavidez. And I get it. Maybe you didn't want to fight. You don't want to fight him. But what did Benavidez do? He went ahead and he fought the most dangerous guy, another guy that you wouldn't fight.
Right.
Demetrius Andrade. The winner has to go and fight Canelo. The winner was David Benavidez. To me, there are no other fights for Canelo to take. And all I can say is that if it's Munguia or anybody else, they're going to put it on pay-per-view.
Fugazi.
I'm saying to the listeners, don't buy it. Do not buy the fight.
Look, if he fights Jamal or he fights Munguia, it's a Fugazi. But I do disagree with you on one thing.
What's that?
And it's easy to say that, well, he went up, he fought Bivol, and he had nothing to lose. But he did have something to lose. He lost the fight, and he was pretty much taken to school. If he wanted to, we both know, he could have brought Bivol down to 168, 169, or even 170, and he didn't do it. At least he tried to beat him at his best, and he went old school, and I have to give him credit for that. Look, that's why they're weight classes. Bivol is a bad style for him, and he's clearly the bigger guy. So I will give him credit. Look, when you don't cherry pick, I don't care who the fighter is, Sugar Ray Robinson, Joe Louis, Muhammad Ali, I don't care, Roberto Duran. If you don't cherry pick, you're not going undefeated. He went up, he fought the perceived second best guy in the division. He lost a decision. He lost conclusively, but he could have stacked the deck and tilted the field in his favor. I respect him for not doing that. Okay, he's not the best light heavyweight out there, but he's a super middleweight. See, he doesn't get that excuse with Benavidez. There is no way that he should get a pass. If he wants to be the man, he has to beat Benavidez at 168 to prove he's the man at 168.
There we go. That says it all. He says, when it's all said and done, he wants to be known as a great champion. He certainly wants to be known as the greatest Mexican fighter ever. But I think if he goes through his career, and he's got 60 victories right now, with only 2 losses, one of them against the light heavyweight champion, and the other about 10 years ago to Floyd Mayweather,
who sucked him down to 152.
Yeah. So those are his 2 losses. But if he really wants to go down and be the greatest Mexican, he is not going to be able to get through his career. He already waited for Demetrius Andrade to lose. Now he could possibly wait for David Morrell to lose. And maybe he's going to wait so long, he'll think that, you know what, David Benavidez is not going to wait for me. He'll take other fights. Maybe he'll fight David Morrell and they'll knock each other off. So he's got to face another Mexican, the Mexican monster. He's got to face him because there's a lot of Mexicans out there who absolutely will not show him that top love that he's looking
No,
for.
he cannot fall on that. I don't want to fight another Mexican, or this guy doesn't have a name. No, he does not have that as an excuse. Before we continue, let me just say, Joe Bergman, Mr. Eagles himself. Randy, do you believe Benavidez Alvarez happens next year? I think he's already answered that, Joe. I think he thinks that he's probably going to fight Canelo or Charlo or somebody else. Jason Gonzalez says that I'm assuming he means Benavidez is flat-footed, but so is Canelo, so that's not really a big deal. And there's been a lot of great flat-footed fighters, Jason, as I'm sure you know that. Now, here's my curveball to you. Benavidez actually has a better style for Canelo to fight than Andrade does. I actually think Andrade would have been more of a problem as far as Canelo looking great against him, because guys that jab and move have been a problem for Canelo. Now that Benavidez has won the fight, let's just say for fun that they do fight. Let's just say Canelo throws us off and he says, you know what? I'm going to fight this guy. I can beat him. So I'm going to throw it back to you, and I want you to ponder this. We've seen Canelo outboxed. We saw Mayweather do it. We saw Bivol do it. You can make a case as Larry Landra did it in their fight. But one thing we've really never seen is Canelo lose a slugfest or an outright fight. Even Gigi in his prime, he went hammer and nail with, and he was right there. Benavidez, we both know that if he fights Canelo, he's going to be the alpha. He's going to try to assert himself as the alpha. He's not going to try to outbox him. Canelo has a cast iron chin, and Canelo can also hit him harder than anybody's ever hit Benitez. So where I'm going with this is, it's easy to kind of rip Canelo right now, but if you go style-wise, I think Canelo, because of his chin and the fact that he can crack and he can rumble, I don't think it's automatic for Benavidez if they fight.
Totally agree with you, and that's what's making me even crazier about this.
Thanks, Jason, on the pronunciation. I butchered all names. Go ahead, Randy.
And by the way, Joseph Bergman, a big Philly fan, and Jason Gonzalez, an outstanding journalist.
Don't be too nice to Joseph Bergman, Randy. He's gloating right now over the Eagles. He put more post up, 10-1, can't be stopped. You know what? He needs to be taken down a peg. Love you, Joe.
Well, guys, it's like this, and I definitely agree with you. I think that Demetrius Andrade, especially early in the fight, would give Canelo a much tougher fight because, as you said, boxers throw him off a little bit more. And
guys that jab and move are a problem.
But the thing is, this is a 12-round fight. And I do think because of his constant power and the pressure that Canelo can put on, he would eventually get to Demetrius Andrade. I do think Canelo can beat Benavidez. I am not saying that this is a one-sided fight, that he doesn't want to take it because Benavidez is going to beat him easily. No, this is, I think, an incredibly two-sided fight. I see Benavidez winning it. I see Canelo winning it. But if Canelo is into this legacy thing that he talks about, he
has to fight him.
Imagine how big he would be if he beat Benavidez?
No, I totally agree. And I also think, let's just play this out. Say they fight. They go toe-to-toe, and it's now round 7. And Benavidez has not dented Canelo at all or shook him. I actually think that turns into Canelo's advantage down the stretch. I really do. I think Benavidez, as much as I like him, I think once he sees he's hurt you, he's like Tyson. He's a tiger. I'm not sure how he holds up that if he hits Canelo with his Sunday best and Canelo shakes his head and starts walking towards him saying, okay, that's not good. It's not bad. Let me give you a little back. I actually think mentally that would favor Canelo.
I'm not going to disagree with any of that. That's why they make that fight. I'm telling you right now, it is the fight of the year. And I don't care if it goes 1 brutal round, 5 brutal rounds. It is going to be brutal. It is going to be the fight of the year. It could go 12 rounds. If it goes to a decision, it is going to be like this. They're going to need 3 of the very best judges in there. I want to see this fight. And when it does happen, even if Canelo loses, he did what he had to do and face the very best after him. And of course, if he beats Benavidez, he doesn't need anything else. He doesn't need David Morrell or anybody. He could say, good night, everybody. I'm out of here. I'm just going to wait for the call from Canastota.
I can see, if they fight, I can see Benavidez coming out fast and trying to let Canelo know, I'm not afraid of you. I'm the alpha in here. And I could also see if he doesn't shake Canelo, that could come out, that could turn against him. I agree with Jeff Talbot. I think he has to do it sooner rather than later. But let me just say this. One thing I will say in Benavidez's favor is I do think he is, let's just say they fight Cinco de Mayo. Or we know Canelo fights in May and September. Let's just say they fight September 2024. I do think Benavidez is getting him at the right time, and it would be the perfect time for him to go because I think he's about at his peak. And Canelo, as good as he's looked, I still think he's just on the other side of the hill. Not in decline, but just a tad, right? So I think timing-wise, it works to Benavidez's advantage.
Well, certainly Benavidez, 26 years old? So time is on his side. He could say, you know what? Canelo, you could let this thing marinate all you want. Let it go a year. Let it go 2 years. Let it go 3 years. You're going to be 36, 37. I'm going to be 29, not even in my prime yet. The sooner Canelo takes the fight, I think the better off it is for him. And again, I do think this is a two-sided fight. This is not in my mind, this is not a Canelo blowout. It's not a Benavidez blowout. It's a fight that the fight fans deserve. Because we're just not, we have been getting, this year has been pretty decent. Where, we never really thought we were going to get Terrence Crawford against Errol Spence, and we did. And I applaud that. But a lot of the guys just aren't fighting anymore. They don't fight 5-6 times a year. They fight 2 or 3 times a year, and that's it.
And Randy, you know what?
This is as good a fight as boxing can make.
I agree, but again, Canelo is an easy guy to put on the dartboard, and I have been on both sides. I've ripped him and I've defended him, but I will say this about Canelo, and no one can refute this. At least he fights. He keeps active. Now, 2 times a year compared to Emil Griffith, no, that's nothing. But in today's boxing, for an elite champion to fight at least, we know we can count on him at least twice a year. Sometimes it's been 3 times. He has at least kept the sport somewhat relevant, and I do have to give him props for that. Has he fought a killer every time out? It's usually been a name and there's been an angle like it was with Mayweather, but he has taken some chances. So for Canelo, I will give him that, but there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. He's got to come out and say, David Benavidez, I'm the boss of this division, and you don't have a say in it until you go through me.
Well, he certainly can't say, David Benavidez, I'm the boss. You go beat somebody, because Benavidez.
No, he can't say that.
Okay. Benavidez knows he's got to go through him. He knows that he's number 2, and he always will be number 2 unless Canelo faces him. But Canelo, he can fight all the Jaime Munguias and the Rocky Fieldings. And look, I do think that a Munguia fight would be a lot of fun. Not yet. Let the big
Munguia could never beat Canelo.
First.
Randy, you know what's sad? Look, we're fight guys. We love seeing fighters get paid, and when they're retired, having their health and their wealth and the respect and all that. But the sad part is, because at the very top, the money is so good, it really does hurt the sport, and guys won't take a chance, and we don't get to see the best fights because it's risk reward, and it's just a shame that that's the way it is. And I know we can look at the guys in the past where, you know, they didn't retire in the best way, where a lot of the guys fighting today probably are never going to have to worry about that again. So it's a catch-22. It's good for the fighters, but it has hurt the sport. And the problem is, because Canelo could make $25 million fighting Munguia, and probably more than that fighting Jermall Charlo, there's more than a 50-50 shot that we won't get to see him against Benavidez.
That's just a sad commentary right there, to think that the great, and he is a great fighter, that the great Canelo Alvarez may never step in the ring against David Benavidez. So can you picture it? Because I don't know out there at 168 pounds who is going to beat David Benavidez. He may have to move up. He may have to fight a Dmitry Bivol. He may have to fight an Artur Beterbiev. You know, he came into the fight the other day somewhere around 190 pounds.
Is that what he weighed in the ring?
Yes. And do you know that once upon a time, his heaviest weight, this is a big man, he weighed 240 pounds.
He was a fat kid for a while. He was a fat, yeah.
I sat with him at the International Boxing Hall of Fame, I think it was in 2019, and we did a nice interview together. And I said, you're a big guy. Do you have trouble making 168? And he said, well, I don't kill myself, but I've got to constantly be watching my diet. And I could easily fall off the wagon with the diet. He said, so I have to train constantly and totally watch my diet. He said it would be a lot easier for me if I fought light heavyweight or cruiserweight. And he said, look, I'm a big guy. Once upon a time, I was 240 pounds. I said, wait a minute. Did you just say 240?
That's what Muhammad Ali weighed during his exile.
And he said, yeah, it was 240. I said, okay. I mean, at 240, what, you look like Andy Ruiz? You said, hey, a taller Andy Ruiz. But then I got rid of it. And, well, you know, and Andy Ruiz, you know, he's around 6'3". So, you know, he's not a little guy. But he's walked around at close to 300 pounds. And he has now shaved it off. And this guy can't even get a fight now. I don't like the inactivity of these guys, that they refuse to fight.
No, it's dreadful.
We want big fights. And unfortunately, because the networks have gone away, because the afternoon fights have gone away that we talked about, the ABCs, NBCs, CBS, they've gone away. HBO has now gone away. Showtime is on its last show coming up December 16th. They're going away. And then everything else is going to be ESPN Plus, ESPN, DAZN. Not a lot of people get that.
That's
DAZN
going to take
app.
some of the leverage away from the fighters, and they're going to have to step down a little bit and start fighting each other and not pricing themselves out of the fights. Look, all right, we took care of the Benavidez fight. We both think it'll happen. We both want it to happen. So let's end the segment this way. Will Canelo's next fight be against Benavidez?
Unfortunately, I don't believe so, because I believe Canelo can do whatever he wants. And I think
Right.
it is sadly going to be somebody like the worst case scenario, Jamal Charlo. I will not buy it. I will implore every one of you, show them you mean business. If they're going to charge you for that garbage, and it would be
Right.
garbage, do not buy it. If he faces Munguia, who's big, undefeated, can punch, okay, fine. But there's, again, only one fight. Do I think that's next for him? No, I don't, unfortunately.
Okay, I agree with you. I don't think we'll see Canelo fight Benavidez next, and I think that's kind of sad. Last question. You wake up tomorrow, you go on Fight News, and you see Canelo has agreed to fight Benavidez Cinco de Mayo tonight. Now, I know you can change your mind, but if the fight was signed tomorrow and I gave you $10,000, I said, look, the only thing you can use this money for is you have to bet on the Benavidez Canelo fight, who would you put the money on?
Great question. I didn't even get with that with Cooney today. You know what?
Tell Cooney I'm his father.
I am going to have to go with the younger, bigger, and I think harder hitting, punch for punch. And I know that Canelo can whack hard with both hands, especially the left hook. But I think that Benavidez is coming into his own. You haven't even seen the best of him. I will go with Benavidez over Canelo. Make the fight. And if it's tomorrow morning and I get up and I'm having my first cup of coffee at 6 a.m, my entire neighborhood is going to be hearing me scream with joy.
Okay. Now, if you called me up and said, Frank, I just saw on Fight News, Canelo's fighting Benavidez. Here's 10 grand. You have to bet it this afternoon. Who are you going to bet it on?
I have a feeling
I'm going to differ with you. What?
You're going with Canelo.
Here's why. I'm going to go with Canelo for a couple reasons. Because I believe Benavidez is a big enough threat that it will get the best out of Canelo. I think if it goes to a decision, I think that favors Canelo. And I don't think Benavidez can knock him out. And I just, even though Benavidez looks like the alpha and the killer, there's a chance he might be a front runner. Canelo's not that guy. Today, if I had to make the pick and bet the money, I would bet it on Canelo. Now, look, that could change the night before the fight, or it could change a month before the fight. But if I had to make the pick today, I still would make Canelo the favorite. So it's kind of cool. We disagree on that. I'm sure we'll be talking about it down the road if it happens. Quickly, I did not see the Taylor fight, the Taylor Cameron fight. It was a rematch. I understand Katie looked great. Give us a quick take on that fight.
I thought it was a lot like the first fight, but in some ways it wasn't. Because in that first fight, Chantel Cameron had the height, the reach. I thought she was a little bit faster. I thought she came into the fight more confident. And she started nailing in that first fight Katie Taylor walking in repeatedly. And I thought by the time that Katie Taylor figured her out, it was a little bit later in the fight. And it was too little, too late.
Right.
But when they signed to fight this one, I said, I think that Chantel Cameron, and I was picking Cameron.
Jack and I both picked Cameron.
I don't see how you couldn't. After watching the first fight and watching Katie Taylor not being able to do what she did, let's say, against Amanda Serrano and so many other opponents, she couldn't get close. She couldn't deliver in close. She couldn't work on the inside. This time, she was able to get under those shots, counter those shots, and each round was close. And I'm looking at my scorecard. I'm saying, oh my God, is this thing going to be close? And indeed it was. And it was another majority decision. But it's funny. One of the judges had it 95-95, a draw. Another one had it close for Katie Taylor at 96-94, I think it was. And then another one had Katie Taylor by a blowout, 98-92.
How does that happen? How does that happen? That always happens.
I don't.
Why is there always that one outlier? These guys should have to be quizzed and have to answer the fact and how they came up with their scores after the fight. There's no accountability. But here's my question. You said Katie Taylor couldn't get in the first time, couldn't fight her fight. Why was she able to do that this time? Do you think it's more the adjustments that she made and tweaked her style, or was Cameron a little less?
Remember, it takes two to make a fight or not. And Chantel did not come in any better than she was the first fight. And I thought that Katie Taylor was better the second time around. She was a step quicker. And anytime she was moving the head, it was the proper way. She was blocking shots, a lot of the shots being picked off up here. And then she wouldn't just stand there. She would counter. She would throw it right down to the body. A right hand would come in. She'd block it here, bang, and she'd come. Now she's got the hand out here, blocked, bang, right down the middle. Great counter shot. She did a great job.
So she went back and watched the fight and realized what she may have left on the table the last fight, and she adjusted. So good for her. That's a mark of a great fighter. Changing up a little bit. You know, we talked a couple minutes before you came on, and I told you I was watching a tape I never saw before of Rocky Marciano's sparring back in 52. And, you know, that got me thinking, and you're the perfect guy to get into this with. Who are some of the great fighters, or not even great, they don't have to be all-time greats, but who are some of the fighters that fascinated you the most? Because I said to you when I was watching it, I said, I was always fascinated by Rocky Marciano. And it made me think there are three fighters, and I hate to say that they're heavyweights, but there are three fighters of my lifetime. Well, Marciano's a little bit before it, but three fighters of my lifetime who I wish I could have met and I could have spoken to. One of them you knew well, but the three guys were, and I want to hear your three are, but the three guys I really were fascinated by were Rocky Marciano, Sonny Liston, and Jerry Quarry. Now, you met all three, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I didn't meet any of those guys. The closest I came was, you know, Tom Brookshire and Jerry Quarry used to do the fights on CBS.
Did a great
job. Well, Tom Brooks, pardon me?
They did a great job. Jerry was
right. And I love Quarry as an announcer. Well, Brookshire used to do a sports talk show back in the 80s on WIP radio. And because of Jack McKinney, I was his go-to boxing guy. So whenever there was a fight, Tom would call me up and say, Frank, look, Leonard and Hearns are fighting tonight, whatever. Can you come on and talk about the fight? Give us a breakdown and a pick. Okay, great. But Tom loved boxing. That was his second favorite sport after football. So we would talk off the air frequently, and he would tell me stories about Jerry Quarry and how he, you know, he was good friends with both Frazier and Quarry, but he really could tell it's like he had a soft spot for Jerry. So he would tell me a lot of stories about him. In fact, and he even called me when Jerry died in 99, and that's how I found out. But so that's how I lived through never meeting Jerry Quarry. But who were some of the guys that fascinated you they're my three. Marciano, Liston, and Quarry.
Well, probably number one, I've always been fascinated with Henry Armstrong because I have heard stories from so many of the guys who worked with him, worked against him, the trainers who worked in the other corners.
Right.
He would warm up. Let's say he was due to go on at 10 o'clock. He would be in his dressing room taped up. And at 9 o'clock, he would begin warming up.
Wow.
And he would actually, they would put a stopwatch on him. He would shadow box hard, 3 minutes. Then he would go over and he'd sit down on a stool. And then he would shadow box again. He would do 15 rounds of shadow boxing. And if anybody knows what it's, if they remember their days of shadow boxing,
that takes a lot out of you.
Oh my God. You finish 3-4 rounds of shadow boxing, you're soaking wet. He would step into the ring, usually soaking wet, having just done 15 rounds before he'd do another 15 rounds. So, yeah, Henry Armstrong was definitely one of the guys. Another one that I got to know him later in life was Carmen Basilio. Carmen fought with this because he didn't have the natural ability. He didn't have that one punch knockout power. He wasn't extremely quick. He wouldn't box your ears off. But when the bell rang, he would be in your face, throwing shot after shot after shot after shot.
He had the best, Randy. I don't mean to cut you off, but he had one of the best one-liners ever. Remember when on the tape before he fought Robinson the second time, and Howard Cosell goes up to him and says, "Carmen, 9 out of 10 boxing writers pick Ray to beat you tonight. What do you have to say about that?" And he goes, "9 of them are wrong."
That's Carmen. He was just a delight, and certainly I got to know him later in life. And you know what? His wife, she would exercise every day. And she would do hundreds and hundreds of sit-ups. And the very first time I met her, she said, "Hello, Commissioner." And she said, "Punch me in the stomach." And I said, "Excuse me?" And Carmen was standing there. She said, "Go ahead, Commissioner. Hit her in the stomach." I said, "Carmen, this is your wife. I'm not going to punch your wife." He gives me a smack on the arm. "Hit her in the stomach." And I give her a little love tap. And he goes, "Are you going to hit her or am I going to hit you?" I give her just maybe that hard. And
right.
So he goes, "I'm going to give you one more chance. You hit her. You ain't going to hurt her." And I went like, bang. It bounced off of her and she went, "Is that the best you have?" but I mean, and then he took a little shot with a right hand and with a left midsection. She took it well. So, I mean, Josie, she was just unbelievable. So, look, I mean, those are two of the fighters. And then everything I did get to meet later in his life, and we became friends. But I wish I could have known him at the top of his game, Willie Pep. I would have loved to have seen the early 40s Willie Pep when he was running off victory after victory after victory and going through fights where he wasn't even hit. He could hit you when he wanted. He could stand in front of you. You weren't going to touch him. I mean, what we could have learned from watching a Willie Pep. So those are the guys that I think I really would have loved to have spent a lot more time with.
All right, now I'm going to flip the script on you, and this is going to – the guys that are watching this fight and this guy are watching this, they're fans of this guy. Their eyes are going to shoot fire at me after I say this. But if I had to name an all-time great, a truly all-time great fighter, and under any metric, this guy measures up, who I was the least fascinated by, Didn't care if I missed his fights or not. The guy just never held my attention, and I kind of rooted against him almost his entire career. Are you sitting down? Are you strapped to that chair?
Oh,
This is going to
Yeah.
blow you away, and I just want to know if there's anybody on your list or out there who you have this tour feel this way towards.
Is this a yesterday fighter or a contemporary?
No, this is a yesterday, somewhat recent, all-time great, and I will admit he's one of the GOATs, no doubt about it, but when he fought, I rooted against him, and I was never awed by him or fascinated by him.
Wait,
And I'm going to give you two, but there's one that leads the pack. You ready?
was he a big guy?
What's big?
Big. Was he a heavyweight?
He was not a heavyweight.
He's not a heavyweight. I can't
If you guess this, you can walk on water.
I can't even picture where you're going with this, and probably when you say it,
Oh, it's going to blow you away. You're going to want to come through the camera and choke me. You ready? As
Yeah.
great as he was, as all-time great as he was, Marvin Hagler bored the hell out of me.
Marvin Hagler bored. There's something wrong with my computer. I thought you said
Never
bored.
fascinated me. I never cared so much for his fights. I rooted against him the whole time. I came around late on his greatness. Marvin Hagler never fascinated me or awed me. And then the guy I would put behind that would be Mike Tyson. Can you believe that?
Thumbs up or thumbs down on Tyson?
Tyson was another guy, Randy, that when he was going through the division, I just said, big fish, small pond. He's not all that. Hagler turned out to be all that. To me, even though I think Tyson is one of the top 5 most skilled heavyweights in history, and if you go by a head-to-head basis, you can make a case he's in the top 10. But I was never awed by Marvin Hagler or Mike Tyson, as great as they were. So my question to you is, are there any great fighters that you just were a little late on, or you just weren't on board with the other people? Which for me, it's Hagler and Tyson. And all you guys out there are going crazy. Let me just make this clear. Marvin Hagler is one of the top 5 greatest middleweights of all time. He's as tough as any fighter that's ever lived. He was as prepared. He could box. He could punch. He had it all. But for some reason, I was never captivated by him. Where like Michael Spinks fascinated me, and I enjoyed watching him fight much more than Hagler. And the same applies to Leonard.
I actually can't think of anybody that I could put in that category. I mean, I thought that what Marvin Hagler did, because he was always in magnificent shape, he didn't cheat any of us. He could box right-handed, he could box left-handed, and each way as well as the other way. And he stepped into the ring with such confidence. I saw him from the beginning, and down in Philadelphia, before I knew you, I used to go down with Flash Gordon and Harold Letterman. We used to ride down together from New York and watch those fights that Russell Peltz was putting on.
Now, were you in Hagler's first fight with Monroe when he lost?
Yeah.
I was there too, and maybe I just never got over that, because Willie clearly beat him conclusively that night. Boogaloo Watts did not. But Monroe clearly beat him, and Hagler admitted in the paper the next day that he clearly lost and he's going to learn from it, and he did. So maybe I just never got past that, and it's hard for me to admit that, but Marvin just never blew me away.
Because you do obviously know that fighters, athletes, a lot of times they get better and better in their career. They pick up things, they learn things, they get better. And that's exactly what happened with Hagler.
I was 17 at the time, so obviously I had a lot to learn.
He He got better in every single way. And I think by fighting those earlier fights against the Watts and the Monroes and guys like that, I think this is one of those examples where, because he was so good, they didn't destroy him and ruin his career as could happen to so many other fighters. What they did, they kicked his game up by several notches, and he became a better fighter because he fought them.
When he destroyed Tony Simpson and Mustafa Hamsho in the rematch, I was totally sold. He was a killer. He was scary good that night. Randy, we are out of time.
What?
This is fun. We will do it again. Jack will be back next week. Jack, hope everything turned out all right. And Randy, all I can say is this. Thanks for coming on. The hour flew by, and we will pick this up somewhere down the road, and we'll definitely discuss the Canelo Benavidez fight, because as of today, I might give the edge to Canelo.
Well,
closing thought.
Let's see what happens. And I'm going to be watching your show, if I'm not doing it in place of you or Jack, December 23rd, the biggest fight card of the year, December 23rd in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, the new Las Vegas. What a card it is. I can't wait for it.
Can't wait. Randy, thanks for coming on. To all of you guys out there watching, wherever you may be, thank you so much.